Hello, everyone. Larry Dillon from Scalable Insights Podcast, bringing you people and ideas to help you grow and scale your business. Jim Wilson.
Larry Dillon.
How you doing, man?
Great.
Great to see you.
Always.
So tell our audience who you are, where you work, a little bit about you yourself.
Yeah, sure. So born and raised in Philadelphia. I've known Larry for 20 plus years. Always stayed in the Philly area, went to Villanova University, started in commercial real estate business while I was in college.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I got my license while I was in college.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So before they threw me to the wolves, I learned the business and, for a couple of years before, going full time. Never had a paycheck really in my life. Had to, always worked on commission and
Straight commission.
Yeah, straight commission. Had to kill what I eat.
Yep.
Currently work for Newmark, which is in, they have 4 offices in the area, but I'm in the King of Prussia, the suburban Philadelphia office. And I'm a commercial real estate broker and do anything from leasing to sales, from office, medical, educational facilities, industrial, a little bit of retail, you name it.
So talk to me about starting off, because I think it can be a very lucrative career, and I think it's an interesting career because the first couple of years are brutal. Like starting while you're in college was smart. So talk about like the ramp up time.
Yeah, so the length that it takes to do a deal is typically a year. So, you're not seeing anything from doing that in a commercial real estate deal for another year. So you really have to keep that pipeline going because the stuff you're not working on today is not going to kill you today, but 9-12 months out, it's going to kill you. So you always have to be working on stuff. So that's why, especially when you're starting out the first couple of years where you're learning the business and you're trying to build your book of business, it's tough. My first broker, Tim Mahoney, said when you joined the business, he said, do you have a trust fund? Because he said the first couple of years, you're not going to make any money,
Right.
So that's why I started in college. I figured I'd kind of try to absorb as much as I could and, follow some guys around so that when I came out, I was going to make some money. I didn't want to come out not making any money.
Yeah. So what were you doing? What types of activities were you doing to sort of build that book of business? How did you meet people? What's the strategy?
It just got in front of people. So was always willing to, hey, someone, you want to come on this tour with me? Shadowing a lot of guys doing stuff, but I was fortunate enough to actually get involved in transactions and not just shadow people pretty early on. So I just took it upon myself to kind of pick things up quickly, think on my feet, and get involved in some transactions as young as 20 years old. And ever since then, it's just I've just figured things out.
And what do you do? So how do the opportunities present themselves? Were the opportunities given to you from the office? Did you have to network? Like how do you get those first deals, or how do you what do you do to build your network or build referrals, or how does that work?
Yeah, it was a combination of some things that the office provided, but they had a need. They needed someone to handle some listings for them. That they, I was probably best to handle them because they were smaller requirements. You have to start small. And, those, you never know. I've had small requirements, say someone's putting me on an office building where there's some small office suites for lease. I learned the business. I learned how to negotiate contracts, all of that. But then you meet people just through handling that listing. And then you leverage that and you learn about someone else who wants to buy a building. Also networking. I joined like the ULI Philadelphia chapter, joined a bunch of other networking organizations just to get my name out there and understand what other people were up to and who other people were, who the prominent people in Philadelphia real estate were, and kind of understand how the business works from all different aspects.
What's ULI?
It's the Urban Land Institute.
Gotcha. So, and so some of those, and I guess as, starting out, I guess there's probably some small deals, some small tenants that the more established brokers just don't want to handle anymore. Is that the case? Is that sort of?
Yeah. That's it's not worth their time. So, but they have clients who still need to be serviced that have large requirements and small requirements. So sometimes you're the guy working on the small one.
Right.
And sometimes the client sees you working so hard on that small one, they're like, hey, we want them involved on these bigger things because this guy's really hustling.
Right. And I guess also the more deals you do, the more you're going to have those companies that sort of skyrocket. Are there some, can you talk to us about some deals that maybe started off as like very tiny commission checks that are now, have been resulted in a lot of deals over the years, like companies that wound up taking off?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple examples of where we took on an assignment and I suggested we take on the assignment. It was small and it ended up being something much bigger. One of them was, an office building. There was a restaurant on the first floor. The upper 3 floors were office, and we were trying to lease one of the floors. It was like 4,000 square foot floor. And we put a sign on the building. It was right near the train station in Ardmore. And someone calls me on the sign on the building and says, hey, would you guys sell that building? And I said, well, it's not for sale, but like, what are you looking for? What are your needs? He said, well, I need like 20 or 30,000 square feet of space. And I said, well, the whole building's 12,000 feet of office. I said, I've got another building though down the street that I'm handling. You might want to take a look at. It's 51,000 square feet. We went and looked at it. They ended up, a couple months later buying it for $10 million.
Wow.
So you never know where these things come from. But if you get yourself out there, another example is, we took on a client that we were leasing a multi-story office building, and there was all of a sudden real estate that came up next to them. It was available. And I was aware of one of these 5 buildings that was coming up for sale. And I said, hey, you guys ought to take a look at this. It's adjacent. It's contiguous with what you guys own. And the zoning's pretty unique. It's like a very dense zoning that's probably going to go away soon. And they ended up buying that and the other 4 buildings next to it for $16 million plus.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just, and now I'm doing similar things for that client.
Mm-hmm.
Because they said, hey, you figured that out. We've got this other property. We might want to assemble some other ones near it. Can you take a look at this?
So have you seen brokers or folks starting out in the business that just don't make it? Or what's the difference between someone that becomes really successful at it and maybe somebody that's not successful? What's the difference? What's the differences that you can see that, make somebody very successful in that career versus, kind of plodding along?
I think they have to be excited about it. And I think they have to, I just like meeting people. And in my business, it's all about, getting in front of people. I get to meet so many different businesses every week from, you name it. And I'm just really interested in what people's businesses are. And, once I gain their trust, I really dig into, what I can help on with the aspects of their business. And that excites me because I like to show them that, hey, I know some things that, I don't know how you do your business, but there's things I know that you guys don't know, and maybe I can help you out. It's all about helping each other out. And that's what excites me. And I don't focus on the commissions. I focus on let's get this deal done. I think that's more important than focusing on, we had an intern one time and he's like, I like this, but when I graduate college, I'm going to go somewhere where I know I'm going to make money. This is kind of like too risky for me.
Right.
I'm like, well, low risk, low reward. You know, I mean, if you put your mind to it and you actually put the effort in, it's gonna be rewarding. That goes for anything you do. But if you go for the given, easy,
Right.
desk job, whatever, then, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
Yeah. I remember people don't realize how much money there is in commercial real estate. Because, I mean, you can do a lease deal that's millions of dollars just for a lease, which is crazy. People don't understand. Like sometimes the leases are 5-10 years. And I remember I was at a real estate convention and I was talking to this one guy who's in his 40s. And I said, how many deals are you going to do this year? He goes, I'm probably going to do 40. And the commissions on these deals are, on the low side is what, 10 grand, 5 or 10 grand. And on the high side could be, 100 grand, right? Or 50 grand, something like that. And so I'm like, wow, that guy's doing really well. I'm like, wow, you're doing really well. He goes, see that gentleman over there? And there's this older gentleman. He's like 65 years old, 65, maybe 70, beautiful suit, calm as can be. You can tell he's just calm and relaxed. He said, that guy's going to do 3 deals this year and make 10 times what I make.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And people don't realize that because I think especially if you're looking for a career, you want to be in a career where the old man wins.
Yep.
Right? Because like selling copiers, it's the young kid that's going to win. The guy out there hustling and banging, banging the phone, banging the pavement. You don't want to be in a business where the young kid wins. Because it just seems to me that in the commercial real estate business, as you get older, you just wind up getting, because the people that you are connected with, because a lot of these folks you have a long-term relationship with. I know you represent my building, and you were saying trust, and you don't think about the commission. And I know from working with you that never entered my mind. But also the other thing, I think that maybe talk about the problem solving, coming up with unique solutions, because that's the thing that I noticed about you is that, and maybe it's just me, or is that like a common thing? Is that that's one of the things that I appreciate in what you do is that, you're always trying to work out these deals, and there's, versus somebody that's just sort of cookie cutter. Okay, I'm here just to I'm going to show you tenants and this is that. And, but talk to me about sort of the creativity that you bring to that. Is that something that's just natural to you, or are you just always trying to figure out a solution? Because too many times with salespeople, they'll just be like, here's a tenant, walk them through. Okay, see you later.
Yeah, I think some of the creativity comes from putting the work in and understanding the marketplace really well, because then you understand leverage. And so if I'm representing someone, I've got a fiduciary to them, and I want to understand what's our leverage on this deal, because I'm trying to negotiate the best terms for my client, whether it's you as the landlord or if I'm representing a tenant, I got to understand the tenant. And to understand ways we can get creative. And I think that's why it helps. I've worked on both landlord and tenant side because I kind of understand the mindsets of both sides.
Yep.
I think you get more creative. I mean, creativity is, I guess, a natural thing, but it helps if you understand what's going on in the market, because then you could say, hey, I see this going on. And because if you don't put that work in understanding the data of what's going on, it's hard to say we could do this and they're going to accept this, because without knowing that, I know what's in their mindset. And if they're going out to the market, they're not going to be able to get X, Y, and Z. But if we structure it this way, we'll be able to get what you want, Mr. Landlord. And they're going to have to accept it, because I know going out in the marketplace, they won't get this, or their timing's off or something like that. So I think some of the creativity comes from your knowledge of the marketplace.
Yeah. And I think that applies to any type of business or any type of sales position, not looking at it like a cookie cutter. How do we, really digging in deep to try to figure out what is the customer looking for, what's going to help them out. And I know that there's been deals that we've closed just because of one little thing, that we said or that we incorporated in the deal that made that happen.
Yeah, it's being able to like exchange wants and needs, when you're negotiating with these people. So there's certain things that they need and there's certain things that they want. And once you can delineate those things and understand the importance of each, it might be something that's an easy give for the landlord if you're negotiating a lease and you give them a reserved parking space or something. And that means more to them than something else, but that little bit puts them over on, some other issue you're in an impasse at.
Right. And especially from what you're doing, because sometimes the tenant wants like a million things and there's no way you can give them all of the juice that they want. And you have to figure out, what is it? Like you said, how do you trade these things off? And how do you, are the tenants pretty forthcoming with that? Do you dig, or what types of questions do you ask the tenants or your customers that, is it the questioning process, or how do you dig deeper?
Well, I mean, we communicate with a lot of times any of these sophisticated tenants or landlords are going to have their own agent. So we talk to the agent, kind of try to, flesh some of those things out with them.
That's right.
So that's kind of what goes on behind the scenes, with still being a little bit guarded, not giving away information that you're not supposed to be giving away, but just talking agent to agent, like, this is a reasonable request in the marketplace or something like that. I have a client that I love the expression he told me. He's like, you can either have your price or your terms. He's like, I'll give you your price, but I want my terms. Like, right. He's like, because I want options. I want all this, I'll give you your price. So it's always a trade-off, there's always trade-offs going on, and you're trading those things. You're trading price, terms, everything.
So what do you think, if you had to nail it down to one thing, or maybe one or two things, that's the sort of secret to your success, or what do you think it is that's made you successful?
So I think, especially recently, just to surround yourself with mentors and other people who are successful, because they've been through it and they know all the mistakes. They made them, and they're much wiser than you are. And you need a team. You need a team to do anything big. You can't do it on your own. Even though we're all, independent contractors or whatever, you've got to build relationships with other people, and you got to be willing to delegate things and not waste time on things that your talents are better for. So it's surrounding yourself with other, successful people that have, complementing skill sets, and, understanding that you can't do it all and that you have to give to get. Mm-hmm. I think that's a key. Too many people are just trying to get, but you don't get to get unless you're giving something. And that's with everything. That's with life. That's with clients. You have to be giving something they need in order for you to get a reward from it.
Yeah. And I think that holds back. And again, whether you're in sales or whether you're a business owner, that's true. Because I see people getting stuck because they want this from their employees, but they're not willing to step up to the plate, and they can't get past that.
Yeah, I think some people are also scared to say, like, I can't handle this, or this is something I don't want to do, and then they take on some sort of, assignment or client. I mean, I'm constantly referring people to, something I could probably do, but I'm probably not the best person for that. So I'll just talk to someone in my organization and be like, hey, you're better suited for this. And that client remembers that when they're like, wow, you thanks for sending me to whoever it was, because he was definitely like the guy who knew this market and all of that. So, and then he'll come back for another deal later when it's in your wheelhouse.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, the failure to delegate. And again, for business owners, I see people getting stuck because they're like, well, I'm the only one that can do this. I'm the one that only can do this. And then they don't have time to focus on growing their business. And they get stuck in that rut versus like, I got to keep elevating myself so that I'm doing more and more valuable stuff with my time.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are people willing to do those other jobs, but you can't be afraid to give it away, even if it means giving away like a short-term kind of profit or whatever it is, short-term success. You have to look at it's all about the long game.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that, because commercial real estate business, being in that business is the long game. But again, it's the rewards can be, pretty outstanding. And then I guess once you get established and you have this big network of people that that keep coming back, people keep coming back to you, it's almost hard once you get the momentum going for it to stop, right? Because it doesn't take as much energy to keep it moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what is the biggest mistake that you've made?
Biggest mistake that I made? Probably not delegating, like we said earlier, trying to do too much, because I want to make sure the client gets the best. And I feel like I'm going to have to do all of those steps for it, because I'm afraid of turning some of this over to someone else. But you have to. You have to have trust in the people you're turning it over. So that's, once again, surrounding yourself with other people that you can trust to handle some of your clients' needs that, you can't. So luckily, I've been on the end of that with people who were my mentors that said, Jim, I want you to handle this important client of mine. And they were able to delegate. And that's how I learned the business. And that's how I'm trying to teach other people the business now, by getting smart young guys, girls, to work with me and learn the business by working on some, quality clients, but maybe smaller requirements than it would make sense for me to work on.
Right. And in terms of that, like, a lot of people are finding it hard to find sales reps. It's becoming more and more difficult. Is there still, like, what's the interest level like of new people coming in? Because at Newmark, how many brokers are there roughly?
In the Philadelphia region, I don't know. I'd probably have to say 40 or so.
40 or so.
Yeah.
And do you see, like, what's the what's the interest in the commercial? Because it's a very, like, people don't understand the business. It's way different than residential. I mean, it's good because there's no weekends. Holidays are all off. You get all the best holidays. Like, I think you get Groundhog's Day off. You get, but are you has there been a slowdown in the people that are interested in the business? Because it's almost like how do people find out about, like, people don't normally think about the commercial real estate business.
I don't know if there's been a slowdown, so to speak. There's been, like everything else, massive consolidations of, it's becoming a bunch of large firms, and the smaller businesses are getting, taken out of the business. How do people find out about it? I mean, there's plenty of people that are interested in commercial real estate coming out of college, and, the Villanova right down the street here added a whole, real estate, curriculum and school 5-6 years ago to their business school. And so no, I think it's interesting though, because it's all based. There's so many different aspects of commercial real estate. There's different industries. You've got your multifamily people. You've got your industrial. You've got hospitality, office, retail. I mean, you name it. There's specialty fields in each of them. So they're all performing at different levels, all different times. Right now, office is down with the pandemic. Multifamily and industrials, killing it in the market. Medical's doing well too, but it's interesting. There's just so many different industries within commercial real estate you can get into. So many subsectors.
Yeah, and it's always so interesting to me, like with commercial real estate, you guys operate in geographically a fairly tight area, but I'm always astounded, like, I'll be driving along and I'll see a sign or I'll see a building and I'll call you up and you'll know, oh, here's the owner's this. You have the whole background. Most of the time you've got like the whole background on the building. So geographically, you guys operate in a fairly tight area, right? Like,
yeah, and I think that comes with the number of years you've been operating in that area, because you tend to see, the same buildings.
yeah. So what are you seeing in terms of office? Is there, like, I talk to people, every day I'm talking to business owners and I ask them, like, what's going on? What are you seeing? Especially because we deal with the commercial moving business.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you seeing in terms of people coming back to the office? What's going on in terms of occupancy rates here in Philly? I don't know if you know the occupancy rates nationwide for office. What's the current trend?
Yeah, so what's been happening with office is with the pandemic, there's been a flight to quality. So the trophy Class A office product is doing extremely well, and the other Class B stuff it's the commodity type, just regular old office park out in the middle of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
is really struggling. So you've got employers trying to, you've got some people coming in 3 times a week, got mandated by the employers. They want to give them a reason to come into the office. So they've got to have, so part of it is they're downsizing because they're doing this hybrid work model.
Right.
So companies that might have been in a full floor of 20,000 feet might be in 10,000 square feet or less now. So they're going to save money just by that metric on leasing less space.
Less space, yeah.
So they're leasing the really, really ultra high trophy Class A office space that has amenities like gym, cafe, near public transportation, near a town where people could go out, restaurants, because that's what's going to get people interested in coming into the office, not going out and parking at some office park in the middle of nowhere.
Right. And is there in terms of office workers, is there more folks interested in the city and the urban areas or the suburbs? What's going on with that in terms of office?
Yeah, the trend, it's before the pandemic, we were having what they would call like a reverse donut effect, where for the first time in, I think it was like 50 years, the cities were growing at a more rapid rate than the suburbs. And it's the opposite now. Pandemic hit, everyone wanted the, not to be as, as dense and as in a densely populated area. And they wanted a yard, and, they're working from home. They figure out, they could get a dog and work in their sweatpants from their basement. A lot of people went to the suburbs. So the office, the CBD office markets, the central business district office markets are struggling, and the suburban ones are doing a little bit better. I'm not saying that they're all doing well, but downtown, they're here in Philadelphia, they're looking at converting a lot of the buildings to residential.
Right. So, and that is in the city. What about in the suburbs? Is there any movement towards converting office into residential or into? I think I've seen a mall that they were trying to turn into medical, like the whole mall, like a smaller mall turned into complete medical operation.
They are, and it also depends on. It's really case by case, but you are seeing conversions happening. I'm working on one with an office building to multifamily apartment potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're going to see that because you're getting, these big corporate headquarter buildings, especially, they're just not coming back. I think it was, I'm trying to think of who it was out, and they had a building out in Allentown, I want to say, and one in Harleysville. And it was, I think it's Nationwide Insurance. And they decided, pandemic hit, they decided 100% virtual. We're not, so they gave these buildings back. One was like 150,000 square feet. Just sitting there, they're going to turn it into self-storage, from what I understand.
Wow. So, what are the things that just Give me a second for a train of thought. Producer Jeff. Give me a second. This is the first time this has happened.
I'll play elevator music in the background.
Thank you very much. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, I got it. So what advice would you give somebody who is starting out in sales or in the commercial real estate business?
Read up on stuff, read all of the trade journals, make sure you know who the players are and all of that. That's important. I mean, I've gotten business out of just reading the newspaper and making a call. And it shocks me that people don't even read these trade journals. It's like I could see the deal being put together. I'm reading this thing.
Are you kidding? You just you read something and then you just call up and you're like,
and they're like, and they hadn't read it.
And so you actually just find deals just by like reading the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simple stuff.
But no, getting comfortable in front of people and going outside your comfort zone. I think that's how we all grow, you know? I probably wouldn't have been comfortable doing this podcast 10 years ago, but I started co-hosting a radio show a couple years ago. And I don't know, now those type of things, which initially like scared me, or the work you put off that you have to do. My new mantra is like, I try to kind of run towards those things now instead of run away from them, because I think that's the only way you're going to grow. It's like if you're uncomfortable speaking in public, go take some public speaking classes. Like do that, because that's how you're going to grow.
Yeah.
My public speaking class was online, Zoom, and we had a limited amount of times to record our speech and then upload it. So it wasn't really much of a public speaking class.
He was in college during COVID. He just graduated from Jeff, the producer, just graduated from Drexel.
Nice.
So
great school.
He had a great college experience from home, from his from his bedroom.
Yeah, that's not how you learn public speaking. But that's
because you were the last 2 years you were at home.
Yeah, like halfway or 3/4 of the way through my sophomore year, we went home, and then all of junior year was online, and then senior year we came back, but there were still Zoom things, but I was back on campus, but they would still have a lot of restrictions. And then I'd say halfway through my senior year is when things actually started to, lift up. So that was my college.
Well, at least you got that last year, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least I got my freshman year and then a little bit of senior year. So both ends.
Yeah. No. Speaking, I think, like you were saying, like building your knowledge base.
Yeah. Building and also building your network base.
Yeah,
that's huge.
And I think it's a great advice to do speaking gigs. And especially, get your content together, figure out something unique about yourself or something that you can bring to the table and get really well versed in it, and, seek out those opportunities. And, it's amazing to me. Just, I remember I was starting the lead business, and I had AT&T was buying, the local office was buying, and I think they had 26 locations. Like they divided the whole country into 26 regions. And I think I had 2 or 3 of the regions buying from me. And I was always talking to this woman in the Philly office. I never met her. We'd talk on the phone about like sales and about growing the business and stuff like that. And so AT&T, we had 3 out of the 26. So she said to me, I like your ideas. She said, would you, and at this point I'm like 32, maybe 32, 33. She's like, would you come in and, talk at a sales meeting about these ideas? And I developed this formula that describes sales, right? That precisely describes how you got that business that you did.
What is that?
So,
in a nutshell, I'd like.
It's really easy. It's your activity level. It's how many new people you meet, or how many how many opportunities you uncover, right? So during the course of the year. So if I work twice as hard at networking, right, instead of meeting 50 people, I'm going to meet 100. And I know that for every 10 people, I get one opportunity. You find one client, because it all boils down to, because if you didn't network at all, if you stayed at home, just stayed in your office and did nothing, you'd meet nobody. But so for phones and for B2B, it's how many appointments you go on, because you have to give a proposal to get a phone system. So it's the number of appointments times your closing ratio. So you went on 100 appointments over the course of the year. You close 30% of those, or 30, and your average deal is 10 grand. So whatever your sales were, 300 grand, whatever it was.
Gotcha.
That exactly describes what you did. And if you look at the formula, it's really easy, because taking a closing ratio from 33% to 150% is never going to happen. You just can't. And the effort that it takes to move the needle on the closing ratio is astronomical. And so it's very difficult to increase the closing ratio. The average sale, you can't just say, well, I'm only going to sell $1 million phone systems, although some people do and they're successful at it, but that's difficult because there's just a limit to the average sale. There just is for most B2B. It's not like commercial real estate where you guys can do one deal and then retire. But so usually within B2B, the average deal might be 20,000, and then, maybe it's between 20 and 30,000. So that's kind of fixed or optimized. So the only way to increase sales is to increase your activity level. If you double your activity level, you'll double your sales. If you triple your activity level, you'll triple your sales, all things being the same. And then obviously you can tweak, but you can only tweak closing ratio. You can only tweak average sale. And so anyway, I developed this thing, and then it caused my whole career to change.
Then your closing ratio, as you get those under your belt, closing ratio should go up. And
right. But you're never going to double or triple. You can easily double activity level, easily triple it. And so anyway, I'm like, okay. So I go in. It was a room about this size, conference table, maybe a little bit bigger than this. The room was packed, Jim. It was packed. And there were all these people, and I'm like, so I'm up on the whiteboard. I'm like, she introduces me. I'm like, so I'm Larry Dillon. I've been, I've Wendover Corporation. I've been at that for whatever. So go around the room and tell us, your name and how long you've been working for AT&T. Jim Johnson, 30 years. Peggy Smith, 25 years. And they're going around. And
now I'm going to teach you guys.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you guys have been...
what you've been doing wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting really nervous. I realize these are not salespeople. She invited all of the people from like a big SWAT. They were all managers from a whole bunch of different regions.
Gotcha.
And I'm getting really nervous. Now I'm like freaking panicking. And I came up with this formula like years and years before, right? And it changed my career, because then I just focused on, I knew if I doubled activity, I didn't have to worry about anything else. I'm going to double my sales. So That's why I got inside salespeople, and then that, whatever. So I and I'm like, of course you've all seen this formula before. And I put sales S equals activity level AL times closing ratio times average deal. It just is. That's exactly describes your sales, your individual, your team sales, your company sales. And I turn around and they're all just staring at me. And I remember she was standing in the corner. They were literally standing. It was a bunch of almost 20 people in the room. They were lined up. And she said, well, Larry, the woman that brought me in, she goes, we understand the variables, but we've never seen them put together that way. And I was like, holy shit. They don't make any sense, because otherwise you just focus on closing ratio and you're like, big deal. You're going to take closing ratio from 30% to 36% with this monumental effort.
We just have to close more of them. It's like, no,
you got to get the activity up. And I was like, holy shit, you got to be kidding me. I had figured this thing out 10 years ago, and I can still, I'd go into a presentation of a Fortune 500 company today and whip out that formula, and they're like, oh, wow, I never saw that before. So anyway, then I was just like, oh, fuck. I'm sorry. And I just riffed on it and then just explained how all these variables work together, and how you optimize this one, and then it's the quality of the activity and all this other stuff. And I just riffed. After that, I got phone calls from all over the country from people that wanted to buy. And then I got a phone call from this guy, John Winters, out in New Jersey. And he's like, "Oh, Larry, are you Larry Dillon?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're the guy I'm writing all these checks for?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because it was all prepaid. And he's like, "I want to see you." So I went to New Jersey to their headquarters and wound up closing the deal for, it was like $300,000 a year. They gave me a check in the beginning of the year, and that lasted for 10 years while they were still in the business. So I made $3 million in that one meeting. And it was like, just done. Would never happen. We would have slowly, knocked those individual territories down, but that was the catalyst. And having that piece of information, like that if you have something that you've figured out that's unique, then share that. But at that moment, I saw the power of speaking, and it was literally just a lay down for 10 years.
Yeah, and had you not gone out of your comfort zone and done that in front of everyone, I mean...
I was freaking out. I was literally freaking out, especially when they were staring at me. I'm like, God, they must have figured this out. They must have figured this out like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Crazy. So, and I'm sure you have stories too, like anytime that you have that opportunity to do that. And somebody was talking about if you you don't want to attend a trade show, you only want to go if you get to speak at that trade show. But also, and I don't know if you do this, there was a company called Constant Contact, the email service. Yep. They hired 12 established folks to just give free seminars on how to grow your business. It was basically I think a $3 or $4 million a year budget for people who were not allowed to sell, because they would all start the meeting by saying, they'd get a group of people together, and first thing they would say is, "I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm never going to try to sell you anything. I'm just here to help you learn how to grow your business from email marketing." So, giving out free information and helping people with stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people are hesitant to do that because they feel like, well, why am I giving this? That's all about the give to get, know. But telling people like, hey, this other guy might be able to help. He's not even in my company. Or this is a different, it's not a non-real estate deal, but you should be talking to this accountant, or you should be talking to this guy, and not expecting anything from it in return.
And I think that's the thing. That's the other thing I wanted to touch on, is that you were saying that, you can't think about the commission. If you think about the commission, the customer is going to pick up on that.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe you'll get that deal, but you're going to be like, versus if you're dealing with someone else that they're like, they don't really care about the commish, you're going to understand that, and you're going to gravitate towards that, because then there's an option, right? So if I do a deal with you, or you represent me, or you represent my building, and I'm like, and then there's another deal, I'm not going to call Jim, because maybe I'll call someone else. But
his focus is somewhere else. It's not on representing me and getting the best deal. It's about what's going to be the best deal for him.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, because everything that I've ever done, I go through you. I won't talk to people, even if people call to buy the building or do this or do that. I'm like, you got to talk to Jim. But
trained you well.
Yeah, exactly. So now, can you talk about what if folks are interested in investing in commercial real estate? Because it's not the same as leveraging all your credit cards and, getting a 99% loan against the building. What does it take, reasonably, resources? At what point should people start to consider if they want to invest in commercial real estate? Because it's no joke. It's not like I said, it's not like residential real estate where.
Well, if it's a company and not an individual, maybe there's a need, and maybe, for instance, I do a lot of, I run a number of analyses for companies that rent buildings, and
Mm-hmm.
we do a rent versus purchase analysis. And sometimes they're better off leasing, sometimes they're better off purchasing. So we look at the needs and we look at the finances of the company and the return on the investment
Mm-hmm.
over a certain period of time for those companies. If you're talking about an individual, I think it depends on a number of things. Like I said, there's so many different types of commercial real estate. So unless they have some deep understanding of it, they've got to have a really trusted advisor that understands, whether it's multifamily, industrial, office, whatever it is, that understands all the ins and outs of not only, if it's a good deal on paper, but the physical asset itself. And, they have a team around them to look at that and understand how to finance it and all that. It's pretty complicated stuff, and it involves a whole team approach if, someone's looking at investing in something, unless they're already in that business.
Yeah. So, and I think that, markets are changing, even in not such a volatile market that we've been in lately, but, just from working with you, there's this constant change in the marketplace. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of.
Oh boy, here comes the elevator music.
Thank you.
Were you talking about interest rates?
No, I was going to talk about like order of magnitude. It's not like, you're not going to find like a deal for like $500,000 or $1 million.
Yeah, where like you bought this building and it's like worth 15x of what you paid for it. Like,
yeah,
those deals aren't around.
Yeah. So I was going to ask just let me be blunt. You can record this. So
Can I still be Jim?
Yeah, you can still be Jim. I'll be blunt. I'll be blunt. I mean, you're probably looking at these days, probably starting at to get into commercial real estate, depending on the market, right? Probably looking at $1 million, $2 million, $3 million.
Yeah,
as a starting
some
point.
Smaller multifamily stuff. I mean, you and I had invested in, bought some bad debt before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that was 400, 500,000. But you could find some smaller multifamily duplexes, those type. It all depends on the market you're in. I mean, we're kind of in a little bit of a different world here where we live. But now you can find some multifamily stuff that you could pick up for 500,000.
And I would say,
or just buying single apartments. I know guys that do that. Just building up a portfolio of just buying apartments in Conshohocken, wherever it might be.
I would recommend, because the best deals that I've gotten involved with is from hanging out with a commercial realtor. We're at lunch and you'll get a phone call and I'll say, "What was that?" "Well, it's this particular deal." And I remember the one deal where we bought the Franks out in Westchester. I remember I was sitting there with Tim, and Tim got a phone call. I'm like, "What was that about?" He goes, "Well, it's this deal," and we bought and we doubled that in 3 months.
Well, the best things to do was Frank's defaulted. I mean, that was the best thing that happened.
We flipped it for double in 3 months' time. I think it was 3 months. 3 months. But that was but I would say my advice would be that find a commercial realtor that you trust, and I would just hang out with them. I would just and that's what I would do. I would always, we'd go to lunch a lot. And you'll learn about the business and about deals. But I would say that would be the best way versus going into it blind. I don't think you should just go into it blind. I don't think it's like residential where you can just sort of research it.
No, I mean, unless you're just investing some money in some real estate investment trust, and you're talking about actually being involved in the investment.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're just passively, you've got to know that the person that's actively involved in it is knowledgeable and, is going to be looking out for your investment.
Yeah. And I would say, I would say that would be my advice if you're interested investing in commercial real estate is to find a broker that you trust, because that's the tough part. Is that,
and management's always a huge part of commercial real estate.
mm-hmm.
You know, they hear all the problems they deal with. They collect the rent. They know the tenants better than the brokers a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
They're hearing from them all the time. So you have to have a good management team.
Yeah. Well, even the brokers, like like I'm always astounded. Like the tenants, their background, what's going on with them. If they're thumbs up or thumbs down in terms of like, no, you want to walk away. We've had some bad tenants.
Yeah.
That we were happy.
But that's because they're like one of my best referral sources, because you can actually just go and stop in their office and talk to them. I mean, you can't do that with other businesses. I could just go in and be like, hey, here just to say hello.
To a tenant.
Yeah, to a tenant that I put in a building or something.
Yeah.
Someone else would be like, get out of my building. Like what?
Right.
So you just talk with them.
Yeah. And that's, I guess that's when you hear like, hey, we're here. Cause people,
and then
they'll
you hear
sign
the
a 10-year.
problems and you hear,
They might sign we've had tenants who've signed a 10-year lease and then they need to get out in 7 years. But if you're not talking to them, if you wait till 9th year because they signed a 10-year lease to call them back,
they'll be like,
you're going to miss. Yeah, you're going to miss that. You're going to miss that deal. So I guess is that an important part of your business, is just keeping in touch with all the people that you've done business with, not like, hey, see you later, because the leases are, well, now they're shorter, but they used to be 5, 10. 10 years.
I think that's like the extra 10% of work people do. I think a lot of people could do 90% of anything, but that extra like 10% of work to get it to like the 100% is the tough part. Like people will, even when you were talking about people having like a hand raiser on a successful, say, cold call or something, and the person's interested and they said, I want you to evaluate this for me or whatever. And they might start the process or something, but then they're like, already looking past that, going on to something else. They don't actually complete the task. They just do it like 85, 90% of the way.
Yep.
It's like, I think that extra 10% of, following through and completion, and that follow through lasts through past the cycle of the sale.
Oh yeah.
In my business, at least, we're not just, I think it works. It's with everything. It's like customer satisfaction, it's important,
Yeah. And I think that that's probably like we were talking about David Parry, the guy who used to work for me in England that does business turnarounds and double, triples, quadruples companies in like a year or two. If you haven't seen one of the podcasts with David Parry, I highly recommend it. What's that?
So I'll check it out.
We flew him in for a week and then pre-recorded like 10 podcasts. But one of the things that he said was key to his business was that once you got a customer, he put a whole process in place that once you got the customer, the onboarding and what happens to the customer after they sign the check. So too often I see with businesses and salespeople is once you sign the contract and they get their money, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're G-O-O-N-E.
Or they do most of the work and then they like leave them at the aisle and it's like they're just waiting for the check and it's like, wait a second, we didn't like consummate this relationship really. We got to like
right. And
I didn't even see it to the finish line.
Right. Because it's like anytime you have an excuse to call a customer, right? And people, because I've bought, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars in business crap over the last 34 years. And I'm always astounded, like you'll do a deal with someone and then they're gone. Like, hey, I know other people. Like you could make me a happy customer. You could put in an extra 10% and then I'll think of you. But people just sort of drop the ball where that's concerned. And I guess that's probably one of your strengths, that you just assume everyone else does, but you're constantly, sort of keeping in touch. And especially in your business, you can just stop by, but anybody could do that. If you install like a phone system or if you do any kind of work, you can always stop by and say, hey, I was in the neighborhood. Just thought I would say hi. Oh, you know what? funny you should say that. A friend of mine, is going to need this. But people, I think, you're bringing this up, and then because I know how you are. Most sales reps are not that way, which blows my mind. Like you don't even know if you did a good job. You don't know if I'm happy or not. Right. And sometimes if I'm unhappy, it's the easiest thing to tweak it. And then now I'm a happy customer, and now I'm referring you into to people. There was a great book it was called How to Increase Sales from Your Customers. And he talks about keeping in touch with your customer. It's like, hey, how did the job go? Well, I thought it was okay. And then you're like, there were like
something as easy as remembering their birthday and texting them happy birthday.
Yeah,
whatever, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Any excuse.
They're like, wow.
Yeah. It took so much effort to just get to that point where you close the deal, and then to sort of drop the ball after that. But then it's easy to go to that point. But this guy made an interesting point in this book. He's like, because a lot of times you'll do stuff behind the scenes that the customer doesn't know about to make the job go smoothly.
Right.
And he said, ask them, how do you think it went? They're like, well, it was okay. He's like, well, did you realize, especially in the movie business, did you realize that, you had all the systems furniture, and they only manufacture these certain parts every quarter, and they weren't going to be there, and we wouldn't be able to install it. So we manufactured in our shop these parts to do that. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And we did this. Oh, I didn't know that. We did this. I didn't know that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And you just mentioned it. And then all of a sudden they're like, wow, you guys did a great job.
Yeah, that's a good point. And something I try to do is I'll forward an email. Sometimes you got to be careful because the client doesn't always need to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah, exactly.
Need to know it tastes delicious.
Yeah, exactly.
But you also want to show them that you're putting the effort in because, like you said, a lot of stuff goes unseen that you're doing. So, I'll forward an email where I'm negotiating with the other side and just saying that maybe they're being difficult, but I'm showing them that, I was pushing for them on this issue or that issue and saying, hey, look below, I just want to let you know, we're going to resolve this, but they don't know you're working on all that because they haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And it's the easiest thing to do. And David Perry talks about this. This is one of the keys to his success, is that he calls it the onboarding process and what happens after you've closed the sale. And he talks about putting an actual process in place about what you're going to do. But I think for you, and I think for really good business owners, sales reps, I think it just comes naturally to them. But I don't think it hurts to kind of put a process in place to be like, hey, you know what? Just put in your CRM, let's follow up with this guy.
Yeah,
every 3 months.
We'll have a standing bi-weekly call here. And we're going to talk about, where we are on progress with this thing.
Yep. So, so if you thought about, so you're happy with your career. Have you thought about, if you didn't do commercial real estate, what do you think you'd be doing?
I don't know. That's a good question. I originally wanted to go into finance, but I didn't like that after working at Merrill Lynch, interning there one summer. I like meeting all different types of people, and I like the bricks and mortar of real estate. I like going to physical places and seeing tangible assets.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, kind of excites me, looking at different buildings and understanding markets and how they work. I don't know. That's a good question.
Cool. Well, listen.
Computers, maybe. I probably would have gotten into some sort of.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was big on computers when I was younger.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, so I have a question for you. So, if you're trying to scale your business, right, it all boils down to sales, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a process to sales. There's an art to sales. It's not cut and dry. Sales is very complicated process, because you're dealing with people and emotions and all kinds of stuff. So how do you sell?
So I look at the human element of it, right? And that involves a number of things from, actually listening. I think,
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Actually listening. Too many salespeople just, speak too much and they don't listen to the customer.
Show up and throw up.
Yeah. I mean, what you're providing is you're looking to fulfill a need. You might not be able to fulfill that need, but everyone has a special talent, and there's going to be needs that you can fulfill. You've got to determine if you're going to be able to actually help that person. So you actually have to listen to them and hear what their needs are to understand if it's something you can if you're even spending, correct amount of time with that person that you could help them. So a lot of people don't listen.
Yeah. And so have you gotten to the point where you just sort of walk away from deals where you're like, hey, I can't help you out, but maybe you should for this person?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it all comes down to you're selling yourself, really. Even though if you're selling a product or a service, you're really selling yourself. So you have to connect with that person. It's important to make a connection, even if it's small, but it's got to be genuine. It can't be, can't be fake. So, I try to connect with someone once we start talking. I don't go right into a sales pitch or something. I try to maybe learn a little bit about where they're from or something like that, or their business, ask them about their business. And people love to talk about their business. People love talking about themselves. It's easy. I've told my sons this, like, easy way to make friends is you ask them questions about themselves. They'll start talking about themselves, and then they'll just, they're automatically going to be your friends. It's up to you if you decide you want them as friends, but everyone loves talking about themselves.
And I always say, I say to people, if you get a lead or an opportunity, or you find out about someone, go to their website. There's a couple of things. Go to their website.
Do the research ahead.
Find something on the website, and you go to the website, and you're like, hey, I see that this is your third location that you're opening, and get them to talk about that. Or
I went to this one website, and the person was like a really big, like, Minnesota Wild hockey fan, and my wife's cousin's friend was like the head coach for the team. So, like I mentioned, I was like, hey, I noticed, like, on your website it says, I'm like, we know Boudreaux, the former coach. Like, I've met, like, it's just like opened up, like it was like a key that unlocked, just made them comfortable.
Yep.
And they're like, are you looking in my office right now? Like that, I got like Minnesota Wild stuff everywhere.
It's pretty simple now, especially with LinkedIn. People don't bother to do that. The other thing is that, when you're talking about listening, a great question to ask. So if somebody calls you, somebody reaches out to you, first question you should be is, what brings you here today? Right. And so sometimes I remember
people assume why they're there.
They assume it's a single location. And so I remember we got a little job when I was in the commercial moving business. Was this woman from Bell Atlantic, and she had called and left a message that she had to relocate. I think it was 2 offices in the Baltimore area. So I called her up and I said, well, why did you call today? She already told me that it was about 2 offices. She says, well, I'm the real estate manager for Bell Atlantic, which is from, wherever it was, like down Virginia all the way up to Maine. And all of our leases are coming up at the same time. So I have to arrange for moving, these locations. Well, I had no idea that was it. And I'm like, well, you realize we can take care of everything from Maine to Florida if you want. She goes, really? She's like, you're the first person that said that. So we wound up getting, like, instead of 2 deals, we wound up getting 20 deals by just asking the question. She just assumed that she was just going to get a quote. And most sales reps would be like, okay, all right, I'm giving you a quote for these 2 locations. I don't care about anything else. I would always ask people about their business. Like, how's your business doing? What's going on?
Yeah, that's what I do. What challenges are you guys facing in your business? Or, how can I help with what is going on in your business? Yeah,
it's so simple to get them talking about their business. And then because you never know, if you, there's always those rare cases where there's, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's all these other deals underneath that you might be good for you. What are some of the key questions that you like to ask, or stories about asking questions that resulted in like an aha moment and an extra deal or closing the deal?
Like I said, just getting people to talk about their businesses. But when I ask people, what are some of the challenges specifically they're facing in their business? I've always find that interesting to hear them talk about that, because I like trying to be a problem solver and a solution if I can in any way to that.
Yeah. And I guess the more questions you ask, you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and then you can, because I guess it's hard to craft a creative solution, which is always going to separate you from the pack if you don't have a lot of data. If you don't
have the full picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. So, listen, Jim, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. This has been great.
Yeah.
Like I said, every one of these things, I always get these nuggets out of.
So what nugget are we pulling out of this one?
Well, I think the thing about like following up with the customers, and I think not focusing on the commission, those kinds of things, like focusing on like taking care of the customer, focusing on, I think you can always, and I think some of these things because I've been doing this now for, I'm 64, so I've been doing it, since I was 10 years old. I've been doing business, right? So, but I think there's things that made you successful, like at certain parts of your career, and then you drift away, and then you speak to someone like yourself, and then you're like recalibrate. Hey, we need to do a better job of the customer onboarding, or like getting the reps to like, don't think about the money, think about the customer, think about the value that you're going to bring to the customer.
We're constantly learning, making mistakes. That's why I think having a mentor or mentors is important.
Yeah, I think that's super important as well.
I mean, they've been there, done it. They've seen it all.
Yeah, and that's what this podcast is like, because I bring in like the most successful people that I know, and I'm always amazed at just those these sort of conversations that we have where stuff just bubbles out, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, we used to do that, but we need to get back. That's the point of my career I'm at. Oh, we used to do that. We need to get back. We need to put a process in place for that. So,
no, really cool. A lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. If folks are interested in investing in real estate, or if they're looking to lease or buy a building, how do they find you?
Jim Wilson, Newmark, King of Prussia office. Jim.wilson@nmrk.com. It's November Mike Romeo Kilo in the phonetic alphabet.
Producer Jeff will make sure that that's on the end of the video.
Every word. Yep.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having us.